I'm Megan.
I'm CJ.
And I'm Erica.
And this is the Her Podcast.
Due to the sensitive and triggering topics we discuss in this episode, we are including a trigger warning. Please listen with care and reach out to someone you trust if you need to talk. Today we're sitting down with Julia Penner, who is sharing with us her story of living in and leaving an abusive marriage. Julia vulnerably shares about the multiple forms of abuse she endured, what changed for her when she became a mother, and how it felt when the people she loved did not support her, and then how she found love and safety again in remarriage. We go over so many amazing resources that she highly recommends if you or someone you know is finding themselves in an abusive relationship. Please listen with care, and we hope you enjoy. What we're navigating with our kids is being very open and honest with them when they ask us questions, because we're like, if they're asking us, we should answer, because we should like paint the lens for them to like view this from. But then I always have to be like, but this is a topic that other mummies and daddies should have with their kids, so don't go to school and think you need to educate everybody.
Oh, that's a good tip,
right?
Yeah,
because I'm like, just like mommy is talking to you about it, their mommy might want to talk to them about it. Because Nate would just go and get on a soapbox and be like,
Did you know?
Did you know?
Do you guys know what a wedgie means?
Well, I explained. They asked me what did they ask me? It got on the topic of like a period.
My kids are so into periods right now. They're like, tell me everything.
You know what it was?
So interesting.
B, this is gross, but B went into the bathroom and there was a pad on the floor with blood in it.
Did Harvey get into the garbage?
No, like at the school.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, first of all, maybe it wasn't real. I don't know. Because that feels like a high school girl would be like horrified. Like no high school girl would be like, I'm going to leave this here.
Yeah.
Like every high school girl's like, I don't have a period. So I was explaining, but then Nate was like, oh yeah, some girls in my class saw it too. So I'm like, clearly this was like a topic of conversation.
At the school.
Then we did explain what a period was.
How did you, I need your advice on how to explain.
I just told them literally what it is. I was like, this is funny. I know we're going on a rant here, but this is funny to me because you're open with life and everything. But I'm like, why do we shy away from like scientific biology? Why are we nervous?
Here's how your body works.
Yes. Why are we nervous
Let's
to be
learn
like,
about it.
this isn't like something that's fake or, you know, some people think this, people think this. I'm like, this is literally what a female's body does.
Yeah.
There's nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
And there should be no
important.
embarrassment about it because I'm like, this isn't opinion.
Well, it's fact-based.
Yes. But we're weird about these, like sex. People don't want to talk about sex with their kids. And I'm like, but it's extremely natural. Everyone does it. It's a part of our life and our makeup and our biology, right? Like all these things. But people are like, kids shouldn't know about sex. And I'm like,
but then we're all just walking around, and who's going to learn it, and at what point are you going to learn it? And you're going to learn it wrong, and you're going to be like, I think this happens, and this happens, right? And I don't know how you guys are as women and how you grew up, but you get to a point and you're like, I think it was our first podcast.
Oh my gosh. What
happened? Tell me.
It starts with an A, an areola.
do you know what an areola is?
What an areola was.
We need to
just found that out recently. But you know what I mean? I'm like,
We
there's
did.
things in your body.
I feel like our mothers, well, maybe I'm speaking for myself here, but my mom and her generation or friends or whatever, like didn't talk about that kind of stuff at all ever. So it was like this big secret. And like, I didn't know anything about my body, anything, sex included. And then like I grew up Christian. And so then in the church, it's like very not talked about. And if it is talked about, it's bad.
Yes.
You know, like,
that's what we grew up with for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, go ahead.
Well, it's just like, it's one of those things that I like this approach so much better. Being able to talk about it with your kids and making it a normal part of life. Like it's a beautiful part of life that you get to experience. And it's not this shameful thing that, it just makes me sad.
Well, and I went to this conference a few years ago, and the guy was like, he kind of said two things. Number one, his son like asked him about sex, and he was like, his kid was like 7. Yeah. And he was like, okay, I either am like, you're too young for this, or I paint the lens right now to which he will look at sex for the rest of his life. Like he will come back to this moment every time he hears about sex. And it's like, this was my first memory of talking about it.
Wow.
Which I thought,
wouldn't you rather accurate
than him going and like his buddies looking at whatever, right?
Yeah.
The second thing he said was, if your kids come home from school and they ask you about something, it's too late. They've heard it from someone else.
Yep.
they've heard it somewhere else.
That is good. So good word.
Yeah. It's like, it's, they have already been.
Well, is it not just our discomfort?
Totally. Yes. Totally.
Well, we're like, because we obviously have this deep rooted, we grew up, and I think our kids will grow up in a different generation where we grew up. And again, I think we're coming very far, but like in speaking from a church background, it would have been like, you don't have sex. You don't even talk about it. It's bad until you're married, and then it's totally fine. And then you're like, so I'm not allowed to ask about this thing that I'm naturally going to be very curious about.
Yes.
And so now I'm like, I talked to my parents about it maybe like once, and it was like they sat me down to have the conversation, and then we like didn't talk about it again.
Ever. I'm positive I didn't get the talk. I went to my mom when I was 18 and said, I think I want to go on birth control. And my dad was our pharmacist. So
yeah.
Like, I was like, you talk to dad about it, goodbye.
Well, I'm just like,
end of conversation.
The unrealisticness of, from, again, my background, like a switch is just going to get flipped, right? Yes. Like, this is bad, and then switch on, and now it's good. And you're like, how? What? Yeah. And you're like, now I'm going to get married and show up, and I'm just supposed to know what this is going to be?
Well, okay, and the whole modesty culture on top of that, you're like, your body is shameful, and you're going to make men stumble, and all of these things, and then you just learn that your body is not something to love or to like show anyone ever. So then you get married and you're like, oh, sex is a good thing. Like, what? Well, I'm so confused.
And you go from 0 to 10 the day of your wedding.
Yeah.
You go from, we can't be alone because we're going to be tempted. And like, I have people I know who talk to me about their wedding night who came from a background like this, where it was like, don't do this. It's shameful, blah, blah. And they were like, I like had such anxiety because I was like, I should want to do this, but I'm so ingrained that this is bad that like it took them so long to be like, wait. And again, I'm like, this is like a part of the church culture that I would say is like, we need to like change that narrative a lot.
Okay. So everyone needs to go read The Great Sex Rescue by Sheila. It starts with a G. Gregory, I think.
Okay.
Have you guys heard of this book?
No. But did you just share about it?
Life-changing. Okay. So she just wrote another one. Okay. And it's about teaching your girls about all of the beautiful things of life. But she talks so much about like redeeming sex and making it this beautiful thing and teaching us and our kids what it's about. And she did all of these beautiful surveys of women that are like, what did you believe growing up and how has that affected you now? And it's a life-changing book, The Great Sex Rescue. It is so good. And she's like taken a lot of books that have been written, especially in the Christian community, that are like the top books on sex. And they're like, here's what this book says and why it's so bad, like disgusting. So many of these things are like, they make my skin crawl. And she's like, I fixed it for you. This is what you should be saying. Like, this is how we should be talking. Yeah. It's amazing. She's amazing.
Well, we have to stop acting like sex isn't awesome.
Yeah. Because it
There's
is.
so much shame tied.
Let's
so much shame tied to it, I think, especially for women.
So to get into my story just a little bit, in my first marriage, sex was always a really bad thing and always a very scary, anxious, terrible thing and like something that I didn't like. And so going into my new relationship, I was like, I don't even know if I like sex. Like, I might be one of these people that just don't enjoy sex at all. And like, that was a scary, scary thing to enter into.
Okay, so I have two questions. Number one, I think that's very interesting because I am the opposite when it comes to sex. I'm like, I definitely know that I enjoy it. And it's like something that I'm like very pro in my marriage.
Now I am.
Poor Nick sometimes, probably. Yes. But my thought is to normalize the fact that some people don't really enjoy the act, I think is actually a fair discussion. But then my question is, so in your first marriage, did that come from like your culture growing up together? Was that something like you felt you went into the marriage not knowing, like, were you excited when you got married and then in the marriage you were like, no? Like, I'm curious kind of what that looked like.
No, the beginning of our sexual relationship was before marriage. And so I grew up in shame already. And then I really wanted to wait until we were married and things happened and it wasn't my choice. And so it put this like heaviness around sex for me. And then before we got married, I was like, okay, this needs to stop. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I remember, to get real personal, I remember like cutting up the condoms and being like, this is not happening. And then it happened anyway. And I was like, okay, well, if you're going to force this to happen, then we're going to have to buy new condoms, because I would rather you force me into it and be protected and not have a child now than not. And then, so then once we got married, it was that shame just stuck around, and it was like just always a scary, anxiety producing thing. And then it turned into like marital rape very quickly. And so then I just never was able to reach that point where it was like an exciting, exploratory thing. It was just always like, what's going to happen this time? And like, yeah, it was scary.
So obviously beforehand, when you say was forced upon you, are we talking rape? Like, can I use that word?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was, I want to be careful what I say about that.
Absolutely.
Because it is, and if anyone has been through this before, they know, like, sometimes it can be like, you're excited about it at the beginning, but then you want to stop and it doesn't stop. Okay. And I would also say that is rape. Like, I strongly, strongly believe if someone in the relationship wants to stop, you stop. Yeah. Otherwise, you're entering rape territory, So I wouldn't say that every time was rape, although sometimes were. But at the very beginning of our sexual relationship, he had been in an accident. And I think that it changed things in his brain and kind of turned things a little bit. And
an accident while you were together, or okay, so you knew him pre-accident.
Yeah. Well, can we go backwards a little bit?
Sorry.
Let's go backwards a little bit. When did you meet him? Well, tell us a little bit about your relationship and your journey of how you met him and how that progressed through, how long you dated, maybe when you got engaged, married, those types of things.
Yeah. Okay. So we met. Oh, this is so long ago.
You don't have to give us dates if you don't want.
It was like 2010-ish, maybe. We met at a Bible camp, and in my mind, I was like, if you're at a Bible camp, you love Jesus wholeheartedly, And I think he probably did at that time. And then we dated for about a year, and he was in a really bad accident. He had a semi. He fell asleep at the wheel and hit a semi. It was really scary. Yeah. He had I shouldn't share his story, but he had a lot of 70 some stitches in his head, and it was really scary. Yeah, he was in the hospital for a month, and that's when things kind of shifted, I think.
Major head injury.
Yeah, and concussion on top of it, so I mean that changes a person.
Yes.
He was a good guy, and then all of that happened, and I think it just warped things. So yeah, then we broke up for a while because sex happened, and I was not okay with it, and it threw me for a loop. And then we talked and talked and talked during while we were broken up, how you do as a kid. And then we got back together, and shortly after we're engaged. And so the whole time of everything was 2.5 years before meeting and married.
And how old were you?
18 when I met him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 20-ish.
Right.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that. It's a long time ago.
Okay. Yeah.
And sorry, to recap, how long were you engaged and then you got married?
We were engaged in August, married March.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to ask a question that I think people listening will be curious about.
Yeah.
When this was happening before marriage, why did you get married? If you were already I'm not asking because I believe this. I'm curious because I think other people this is probably a question women ask.
Yeah.
Okay, so this abuse was happening before the marriage. So how did the engagement happen? At what were you it's going to get better? This is just we're, that shame before marriage and it's going to be fine after?
I think I feel like I was love bombed.
Yes.
And I was hooked in, and my parents had just gone through a divorce. I was hurt. I was attached to him. Sex is a real thing there's a soul attachment there. And being a Christian, I just totally believed I've had sex with him. He's my guy. This is my life partner, and I did love him at that point too. Yeah. I always said growing up, I would never be in an abusive relationship. I would leave so fast, and then you're in it and it's just totally different. It is. And I see some of my friends now in abusive situations and I'm like, girl, please see, open your eyes. But it's so different when you're in it. And if anyone has been in an abusive situation, it is, when it's good, it's good. And if you're saying that to yourself, you need to get out. Because when it's bad, it's bad.
When we talk about love bombing, I'm can you give me some examples of what that looked like for you in your relationship?
Yeah, one of the first dates we ever went on, he picked me up in his car in a surprise, and he had packed a picnic, and we went to this huge valley overlooking this beautiful river and these beautiful hills and a train, and it was like this most romantic. He had packed us the picnic and brought sparkling, it was just that kind of thing grabbed me, because I was like, he loves me and this is so romantic and my life will be great.
And I think that's the thing that some people don't understand about abusive relationships, which is why I asked that question. Like, I think that is a common misconception for people who haven't been in abusive relationships, is this idea, like, why wouldn't you just leave? And it's like, because there's all these things like love bombing, and when it's good, it's good. Yeah. And then all these backstories, right?
Yeah. And you make excuses because you fall in love first, right? And it's not like, I mean, I think if on the first date he hit me, I would have been like, I'm out.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But it's different when you start off in such a loving way and you're like, this is such a good guy and I see this good part of him and I see this good side of him, and then the things start stacking up and you don't even realize some of them until way later.
Well, it's like that quote that's like, if you put a frog in boiling water, it'll jump out. Yeah. But if you put a frog in a pot and turn the heat on, it will literally stay in there until it dies.
It is exactly like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm curious, were there any conversations when the bad things would happen? Would he like acknowledge that these bad things have happened? Or was he like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, so I was very small in that relationship.
Okay.
And so I did not speak up as much as I should. And I think when you're in a situation like that, you know that if you do speak up, there will be consequences. And I just never went to go there. I never wanted to go there. I'm an Enneagram 9, if that means anything to you. So
yes, it does.
So I understand. Avoid conflict at all costs. And I was always just like, I can smooth this over and it'll be fine, Sorry, what was your question? A little bit of ADHD.
Oh, that's okay. This
You're
side
in good
of the room
company.
has... I'm just kidding. This side, yeah.
Hello.
Well, ADHD on this side. Anxiety on this side.
Oh, anxiety. I'll switch. I'm over there, man.
We can all take turns. That's fine. I was just curious if he ever owned any of the bad things, or if those conversations had ever happened.
No. So later on, when like things were disintegrating and I would start saying what I was thinking, or like confronting him about those things, still to this day, there's never an apology. There's never an acknowledgement that he did something wrong.
So he'll straight up ignore you, or he'll just say like, that never happened?
No, I'm crazy. That's not right.
I've been crazy before.
Isn't that so fun?
It is so fun. I understand this. I understand. It's also, what is that called? When you...
Gaslighting?
Yes, gaslighting, right? Like these, and I think these are traits. I'm not labeling, I don't know this guy, but very narcissistic, which again, brain injuries are very real. Like you said, changes do happen to people when they're in accidents, but that's just so unfortunate. And then you were married and you had babies.
Yeah.
Right? And that changes.
And I love my babies.
Well, and you love your babies, and that I feel like that would change things in terms of like your commitment level.
Oh, absolutely. When I first got pregnant with my firstborn, I remember being in the bathroom and realizing that I was pregnant and just bawling my eyes out. And it wasn't like, I'm pregnant. We had been trying for like over a year, so it should have been in my eyes and a very exciting thing. But my first thought was like, I can never leave. Like, what did I just do? Now I am stuck here forever, which is not a good sign.
Would you have thought that a baby would fix things? I'm just curious, like your headspace.
I think I was just still in such a mentality of like, I'm married. I can't ever get divorced. This is my life and I want kids,
So how did things shift for you? How long were you married? How many babies did you have? How did, walk us along that journey of your thought process of like, okay, things aren't adding up here. I need to create an exit plan. Like, what did that look like?
I remember before kids, talking to my sister. I just had this conversation with her the other day. She's the only one I ever said this to. And I was like, I do not want to be in this marriage, like pre-babies. And she was like, set up a bank account, make an exit plan. And I did. And then 5 months later, I was like, that's stupid. I can't leave this guy. So I shut down the account and I stayed. And, hindsight's 20/20. But then we had 2 kids. They're beautiful, beautiful children. I love them so much. And the oldest turns 7 in a couple of weeks, and my other one is 5.5. They're 18 months apart. And then, so in 2019, my dad passed away very suddenly. He fell down a flight of stairs and was just gone. And that was, I think, a turning point, because when everything happened, he had lived in Swift Current, and so me and my siblings had gone down there and started cleaning up his house and preparing a funeral and making all the decisions and all of that stuff. So obviously I wasn't here with the kids and with my husband at the time.
Okay, you guys know I love my iced coffee, and over time, we all know that coffee can stain your pearly whites. I recently tried an at-home teeth whitening kit to brighten up my smile, and I have to tell you, it was so easy, and I am super happy with the results. So if you want to brighten up your smile quickly and easily too, then you have to try BW Beauty's at-home organic teeth whitening kit. Everything you need to get safe dental grade whitening is in this kit, you guys, including super detailed and easy to follow instructions to make the process an easy breeze. From application to finish took me about 25 minutes. I applied in the bathroom and then I sat back and relaxed for 20 minutes and read my book while it processed. My teeth felt so clean after. And because BW Beauty's organic whitening gel is the perfect balance of active ingredients and stain removing toughness without the typical sensitivity, I did not feel a thing. This is key, you guys. Each kit will give you 6 at-home whitening sessions. And because this treatment does a deep clean of your teeth, they will continue to whiten over the 2 weeks post-treatment. So this is something to keep in mind when you're getting ready for those big events. You know we have an exclusive discount for you guys too. Use Her Smile for 10% off when you order your kit online. I love that BW Beauty's whitening gel is certified organic, vegan, and cruelty-free, and it's crafted by Canadian dental professionals. So you are getting dental grade teeth whitening at home with ease. You'll find BW Beauty on Instagram at BWBeautyYXE and head online at bwbeautyYXE.com to order your at-home organic teeth whitening kit. And remember to use code HERSMILE to save. We are going to link all of this in the show notes for you guys too.
I think that's when I first started to really realize and open my eyes, like, this guy is not supportive. He is not loving. He is not here for me right now. And this is like a big deal. I still had to like make plans for the kids, and he was always really angry at me that I was gone. And I remember a week to the day after we had found out that my dad was dead, we had sex because, and this is so silly, but because I was so like, I didn't like sex. I didn't like being intimate with him. We had gone to this marriage conference thing, and they were like, if it's not, twice or 3 times a week, then you need to schedule it in, which is terrible advice. Don't ever do that. And so Monday nights or Sunday nights, whichever it was, we would have sex. And it was a week later. And he was like, well, it's tonight. Like, you owe me this. And I remember just like laying there, like numb, and being like, what is this? Like, how can he be doing this to me right now when it's so obvious that I'm in so much pain? And so I think that was really eye-opening. And then, thank you. Through the next month or whatever, it was just like really, really tough he was just very not helpful and not caring or loving, And so then the rest of the year was really, I started speaking up a lot more, which was great, but he hated it and it just collapsed. And then,
well, did that have any repercussions for you as you started to speak up? Like,
absolutely.
What did that look like?
Yeah. Like, he wasn't used to me having a voice. Right. And so it was for me, it was like eye-opening and empowering. And I was like, I am here and I am allowed to take up space and deal with it. I started entering that zone. But he would, punch the wall beside my head, and he would say, if I didn't do that, then it would be your face, kind of thing. And like, or he would leave the house and he would tell me, if I don't leave, I'm going to hurt you. So it was like that mind game of like, you're making this happen because of your choices. And I have no, you know what I mean? Like, it was always on me.
Do you remember the first time you found your voice with him?
Oh, good question. I don't know. I I think it was a very slow process. I think I just stopped caring. Like when my father died, everything was just different. I just felt different about everything. And I just stopped being a people pleaser in a lot of ways. And I stopped caring. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm curious, 2 things. Number 1, feel free to pass.
Yeah.
But did anything ever happen to your children?
Yeah.
Because I feel like that would maybe ignite something a little different in a mama. I can only imagine. And then just like you said earlier that you see some of your friends, did you have people in your life saying, this is, girl, what are you doing? Right?
Yeah.
Like the same thing you kind of think now. And what was that like to face those conversations?
Okay, so 2019 happened. My dad died in March. Time went on. I was not in a good place with him already. And then January of 2020, my youngest has a disability and we are not sure what it is. She's a medical mystery. We've done so many tests and all of these things. And in January of 2020, they were looking at a diagnosis and they were like, but this would mean that, you know, you were in a car accident or she dropped as a baby or she was, you know, hurt in some way. And I went home and I was like, I called him at work and I was like, this is so weird. They're looking at this diagnosis, but like nothing ever happened. So what's going on? And then he came home from work and he said, I have to tell you something. And when she was like a few months old, she cried a lot. She was really inconsolable. And he had gone in her crib one night when I was out and just shaken her. And I said, I have to report you. Like, that's child abuse. And he got really mad at me. But maybe that was the first time I really found my voice because I said, this is happening. But instead of going to the police, which was silly, go to the police, I went to our doctor and we have like a whole team for my daughter. And so we went to her developmental pediatrician and our social worker. I just called them and I said, I need an appointment ASAP. I need to come talk to you. And my husband at the time came with me and he said, don't talk, don't tell them anything. I will do the talking. And I said, okay. And so he told them a very tamed down version of what he had told me. And then I told him to leave the room and I told them everything. I just spilt everything that had gone on, like ever. And the social worker said, you are with a ticking time bomb and you need to get out. And he handed me this little chapstick. But it was inside was rolled up this piece of paper with all of these emergency numbers of women's shelters and how to get help and domestic violence and all of these things. And he handed it to me and I was like, whoa, like this is real. This is not in my head. This is a real situation that I'm in right now and I need to get out. You know, it's very scary. And that led us to the police and an investigation. And then COVID happened.
That was my next question.
Yeah. So then they had ordered an emergency test, but COVID happened and everything got thrown off. So by the time we got the MRI done on her brain, it was too late to see if that had done any damage or not. So it'll forever be inconclusive if that was the cause or not. And I truly don't know if it was him or if it was something to do with the birth or like we had a really rough pregnancy to begin with. So it could have been anything. So yeah, that led to me saying I need a divorce. I kicked him out, worked with social services. He came back into the home for like a month or two. And then there was another situation where he threw one of my kids on the couch and he grabbed the other by the arm and like dragged her upstairs just in a fit of rage. And I was like, that's it. I am not allowing these kids to grow up like this. And I'm out and you're leaving. And I said, I want a divorce. I can't do this. So then he moved out for good. He thought it would be when he told his friend, it'll just be 2 or 3 months, you know, and I was like, we're done. But we went to counseling still, which was awful. The counselor that we went to had no background in trauma or in abuse. And I ended up telling her, like, you should not have accepted our case if you aren't prepared to deal with this. Like, this is not okay. And I remember using an example. I remember being like, so he had a hole in his pants and I poked him like jokingly, like, oh, there's a hole in your pants. And he turned around and he pushed me into the fence and I fell over these things and the kids were there watching. And I was like, that's abuse. And he's like, no, it's not. You poked me and you made me mad. Like, no ownership. Like, you deserved that because of what you did, you know? And at that point, the counselor was like, wait, what? Like, I can tell this is not okay, but do you,
Yeah.
So a few weeks later, I quit counseling because I was like, this is not going anywhere. She was wrapped around his finger, I felt. And then in 2021, just before Christmas, my daughters had been spending time with him and with me. And they came inside and my oldest ran in and said, Daddy hit me. I was like, what? What are you talking about? And she told me this story. And he came in with our youngest, carrying her because she can't walk. And I said, explain this to me, like what just happened. And they had been goofing around as kids do. And he got frustrated, lost it, and hit her. And there was a handprint on her back. So I called the police, and at first they were like, we can't really do anything about that. And I said, this is not the first time. And I explained things to them, and they were like, oh, this is like a trail of things. Okay, yeah, we can do something about this. So he was actually arrested and charged. And then he had a time of probation where he couldn't see the girls. And he had a time where he had to be supervised. It's been a whole thing.
And where are we at now with it?
So we've gone through court. We've gone through pre-trial conference. He's fighting for 50-50, and he will get it because our system is so messed up.
Can you share about that?
Yeah.
I'm like having an actual moment of being like, in what world do you call 911 and say, someone just hit my child, I need help? And they're like, sorry. And
there's a big print.
Listen,
I know.
I am not knocking on police. I'm not knocking on
our
let
system.
Me just, it's exactly. They're police officers. I'm not, it's so charged right now, but I'm like, I do believe there are a lot of people who want to help when they go into that role.
Yeah. Oh,
right.
For
I
sure.
do think there are people who want to help. So I don't know what the system is, but I'm like,
no,
what?
It doesn't make sense. I know.
That doesn't make sense to me.
Was he there when you called the police? Like, was your ex-husband there?
No, but he tried to come pick the girls up for his time the next day, and I wouldn't give them to him.
Okay.
And he was really mad, obviously. So I called the police again, and they came, and they were like, you're under investigation, buddy. Like, you're not taking these kids anywhere. So that was good.
Well, and what I find, I need to ask you something. Because you say I kicked him out. And I'm so curious when people say this. I'm like, how do you physically get someone to leave? Like, I'm really curious on this.
So at this point, we were already separated. Like, we were already living separately. So he would come pick up the kids, have them for his time, and then bring them back.
Okay. When you first got separated and he left the house, did he do that willingly? Or were you like, you need to get out of the house, and people had to come make sure he got out of the house?
Yeah, my brother came over.
Okay.
And stood guard with me.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you called the support system.
I did.
And you were
absolutely.
like, hey, I'm going to ask my significant other to leave and to be separated. Were you coached in doing that?
No, I had the initial conversation with him alone, and he was not okay with it, but I was like, it's happening. And then on the day that he was moving out, my brother came over to make sure that he actually moved out.
Okay.
And like,
so that had been a date that you'd communicated and been like, by this date, you're going to be moving out.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really close to my oldest's birthday. And so he wanted to stay till after her birthday. And I said, that's okay. Like, I think that's fair. Just so it wasn't a thing for her, right before her birthday. I don't know if she would have remembered. She was so young, but it was the day after that he moved out.
I understand that though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Back to the messed up system.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So when we went into the court thing, the judge was like, let's not look at the past. Let's look at the future and what's best for the kids. I'm like, what? That deals with the past though. And she was like, nope. It was so frustrating. I have spent $35,000 on this divorce, and we will go back to it in June of 2024, and he will fight for 50-50 again. And at that point, he will get it.
And there is...
But he doesn't have it right now?
No. So right now he has every other weekend with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know.
I know. It's a little mind-blowing.
Which I want to preface this by saying us in this room are not a part of it. We don't know. We don't understand. So these are our reactions to what we're hearing. Because I know with people get very charged in these kind of topics. But yeah, I think we're all having a little bit of a like...
I'm just having a hard time understanding when there has been physical acts against children.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And there's been evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a pattern.
Yeah.
That we're not going to look at the past.
So part of that I don't want to say it's on me because none of this is my fault, but if I would have done a better job of documenting and calling in every little thing, I think it would be a little bit different.
Like
but
if you'd been a squeaky wheel a
yeah,
little bit.
all the way. And so if anyone out there is listening and things like this are happening, like report everything, make the call. Don't feel dumb. There's no shame. Make the call because you just never know. Right.
Well, because I think people, I've not been in your shoes. So please, if this is not what you think, then be like, no, this is not what I think. But I'm like, I can imagine that you're like, I don't want to phone in every little thing. Like that just feels like too much, right? You're like, oh, but it was like just this, or it was just this, or
absolutely.
You like rationalize, right? Or you have people show up maybe sometimes and they're like, oh, it's you again, you know, or maybe like that's the story we tell ourselves.
Absolutely.
Right?
And you feel kind of dumb, to be honest, calling things in, especially when you're in the mindset of like, when things are good, they're great. Like this isn't a big deal, you know?
Well, and okay, this is kind of off topic, but I think people in general feel like anxious about calling 911.
100%.
Like
call 911.
Even I saw a guy fall down the stairs at the university, down Place Riel stairs, like an entire staircase, and everyone stood around and was like,
what do we do?
And he was like laying there, and we were all like, do we call 911? And we're all like adults, and we're like, I don't want to get in trouble if it's not an emergency. So there is a real anxiousness, even in the normal sense. And then I think exactly what CJ's saying. All of a sudden you're like, hey.
And then you have to admit it to yourself and to your family or friends. Like, I had to call the cops again. And that's not something, if you're not ready in a place to leave, you don't want to be like telling your friends because then they'll tell you to leave. You know what I mean? Like it's so messy and so complicated.
Well, and can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Like, I've always wondered, like, what would it feel like to have your cops show up to your house and you're like, what are you thinking about your neighbors?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And like other people that are now witnessing. And then are you telling yourself a story and being like, okay, people are now wondering, like, do you know what I mean? Like, what are all of these pieces that play into you being like, this is not just a phone call and a quick conversation, right? Like you're playing out stories potentially of all these ripple effects of how other people are maybe perceiving what you're doing.
Yeah. I think at the time when I was finally actually telling the cops and calling them and everything, I was past what my neighbors thought. I was so like, my kids need protection and I am it. Like this is all I can do, you know?
Yes.
Yeah. But I think part of why I didn't call the cops in the earlier things is exactly because of that. Yeah.
What will people think?
So to reiterate, call the cops.
Call the cops.
I really want to say
and
that
keep
again.
a journal. Keep a journal of everything because like
document.
We've photocopied everything that I had ever written. I went in and reported the sexual abuse way after, like when we had already been separated.
Marriage. Yeah.
And when I had first made the claim, the investigator or whatever they're called, like didn't really think there was a case. And then when I went in and interviewed with them and like photocopied my journal and everything, she was like, oh my gosh, like keep records of everything. Yeah.
Were you ever worried he was like going to find these records?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And when when you report, she was like, it's your word against his and this will take 3 years if you choose to like go after him for it and you'll probably lose. Like, cool. But I didn't go in wanting to fight him for it. I just wanted it on record. So if anyone in the future goes in and says, hey, is this a good dude? They can pull up his file and they can see it. That's why I reported. I don't want to go through like the whole 3 year telling my story to a bunch of strangers in a courtroom. Like, no thanks. Especially when you're like, know that you're going to lose it anyways. Like, it's not worth it.
So what was it like having that conversation with your family to maybe, if you did, I actually don't know, but like opening up and saying, this is what's going on. This is the situation. I'm out. My kids, like, did you feel very supported or what? Okay.
Because you alluded to like your sister knew at the very beginning before the children.
Yeah.
So did she keep checking in? Like, how did other people start to get to know?
When he had told me that he had shaken our youngest, I started telling my friends what was going on because I needed support at that point. And then I started like telling them other things that had been going on. And so I had 2 friends and my sister, I think, were the main support people that I had. They were just very, you need to get out and divorce is okay. And you need to get it through your head that divorce is okay. And you need to be safe and the kids need to be safe and all of this stuff. And I had, so my best friend Janelle and my friend Tessa and then my sister Allison were like my people. And everyone else now gets it and is like so glad you got out, and this is a messed up situation. But at the time it was very like, excuse me, at the time it was very reconciliation is possible, and you just need to go to counseling more, and you just need to figure it out. But when you're working with a person that doesn't want to figure it out because they can't own anything, like, how do you do that? And I believe that reconciliation is possible for some people, like, absolutely. I don't think divorce is the answer for everyone, but if there's abuse in the situation, you need to at least separate, give your mind some time to see the situation. Because once I got out, it was like, oh, that's not normal. Like, what do you mean that's not normal? Oh, that's not okay. You know? Yeah. And that kind of goes back to your second question. You asked something about friends.
The family. Your family. You said was not supportive.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah,
what did that
really
look like?
hard. Because I did come from a Christian background.
But your
divorce was not okay. I know. Yeah. Yep. So my dad was dead at this time already.
Okay.
Not to have like a total like look on my
I know.
face, but I'm like trying to figure it out.
As a mom, you just don't want to see your kids hurt.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And I had put on such a good facade for so many years. And my husband's the best, and we're so happy, and a good Christian couple, and I love Jesus, which I do love Jesus. But we had put on such a good show that it was really hard for her to wrap her mind around how bad things were.
Right.
And so it was like, I'm reporting my husband, and she would say, careful what you say, it could change his life. Good. Like, it should change his life. Right. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like a, how can I come alongside you at the beginning? It was more of a, what is happening to my daughter, to my sister, you know, like it was a harder transition for them to wrap their minds around it too, you know, which so now I get, but at the time it was very scary. Yeah, probably fear-based. That's a good way to say it.
Well, and I think, unfortunately, for most people, I'm going to blanket statement because we always do. I think a lot of it's that, what are people going to think also? I think sometimes in the back of our head, and it's like the 911, it's like, what if it's not really this bad? And now you make a big thing and you change someone's life, and it's layers upon layers of thoughts and stories we tell ourselves in our heads. Yeah. And even not only yourself telling stories, but now the people in your life who are now going, well, but they've looked so happy.
Yep.
Is she just being dramatic? I mean, now you have a support system, and I feel like I see support for you, even just through social media.
Yeah.
And your divorce just got finalized.
Yes.
After like
November.
A really long time.
Years. Yeah.
I imagine he was holding up the process.
Yeah. And eventually, you know, I did. Eventually, I was just like, this is ridiculous. You said you would sign. Like, what is the holdup? Sign the dang papers. And then 2 weeks later, he did.
Because,
it's like, thank you.
Like, yeah, divorce can take years and years.
Oh, man.
And people don't realize that. It's very expensive.
And I think, going back to it all, I think that's another reason why people don't leave. Because if you are dependent on this person financially, which I was, I'm a stay-at-home mom, still am, like, it is expensive. And when you're dealing with someone who's abusive, they're going to make it harder. Yeah. It's not like an agreed upon, okay, let's...
It's not like amicable, and it's like, okay, let's get out of this with as much intact as we can. It's like fighting tooth and nail to make sure you're destroyed at the end of it.
Yeah.
So if you were a stay-at-home mom then, how did you transition to financially support yourself and leave him?
So this is a terrible blessing is what I call it. When my dad died, he had just retired, and he had left his retirement to me and my siblings.
Wow.
And so that money has paid for my divorce, which is like, thank you, God, that I had that money and I'm not all this money in debt. But also, like, I'd rather have my dad here. So it's one of those, like, push and pull feelings all the time. Yeah.
But now you're married.
But now I'm remarried, and it's great.
And I have so many questions.
Get on it, girl.
Yeah.
Ask the question.
Okay, my first question is, when you met your current husband and started dating him, what was the repercussions from your ex?
So I initially asked, because we were not divorced, but when I started dating him, and so I asked my lawyer, I was like, is this allowed? Like, am I gonna like get sued, or like, and especially with a Christian brain, like dating while you're not divorced, like you're still married, but I was not married. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was something that I had to get over, like just being okay with myself. I didn't tell him right away. I didn't tell him until I was ready to tell the girls and like make sure they were cool with it, you know?
Yep.
They had actually met him before we started dating though. And so I knew that they loved him. And I think that was a huge part of it. I don't think I would have gotten into anything without them like loving the person. But when I told him, he was like, okay, thanks for the heads up. And that was it. I was like,
oh,
okay.
A blessing. Huge blessing.
Yeah. I was expecting the opposite.
I was too. But no, it was very like...
Well, and how long had you been separated at this point?
Like 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what was your boyfriend at the time?
Yeah.
I assume you would have divulged a lot of this and been
Yeah.
hey, here's my baggage. Like, let's open the closet door and show you everything. So I'm curious, like, how did that go?
Well, I'm very open on social media. So I was like sharing everything along the way and this is where I'm at now and whatever. So no, I don't think he followed me super like he does now.
Very supportive.
Like, you have to comment.
Super and supportive. Goes through all my stories and hearts them all.
Love that.
Yeah, but he actually has a lot of baggage too. Sorry, babe.
Where is he? Come on out. No, just kidding.
Wait, we have a special guest.
Yeah. He was actually walking through divorce at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah. So how it originally started, we had known each other back from camp days. So he actually knows my ex. Like we all worked together.
Yeah, you just met the wrong guy.
I know.
Yeah, that's okay.
So we had known each other. We had kept in contact over the years. Like I've always just thought so highly of him. He's just such a beautiful human. And so when I heard that he was going through his divorce, I was like, I reached out and I was like, I am so sorry. This sucks. I know this process. Like, feel free to rant to me anytime you need as you like process all of this or whatever. And then we never stopped talking. Like from that day forward, we just talked for hours every day.
Hey friends, Megan here. You already know that I am a loyal and obsessed Poppy Barley fan, and I was so excited to start wearing my favorite warm weather flats again. Summer is around the corner, and if you are jetting off on any fun adventures, you are going to want to listen up because I'm going to let you in on a few accessories that are going to add ease and comfort to your travels. Poppy Barley's assortment of sustainably made accessories were designed to add ease to your adventures. Explore passport holders in multiple sizes to keep you organized for flying solo or with the whole fam. Go hands-free with cross-body bags designed to hold your travel essentials and backpacks that make the perfect and most stylish carry-ons. Also perfect for travel or playing tourist in your own city if you are sticking close to home like me this summer are Poppy Barley's Ever Ease flats. Friends, these shoes are incredibly comfortable. They are made with super soft leather, memory foam insoles, and anti-blister suede lining. And select styles are also available in wide widths. Each style is ethically made using sustainable materials in an audited green energy factory, and you know we love that. Not only do they produce ethically made, fashion-forward, and functional footwear and accessories, they are a certified B Corp and people-focused company, which makes us love them even more. And you know, we have an exclusive offer for her community. Visit pb.shoes/herpod to subscribe to their newsletter for early access to new releases and $25 off your first purchase of $200 or more. Terms and conditions do apply.
It was amazing.
There's something to be said about, I love how you said walking through divorce at the same time. There's something to be said about walking through a similar experience to somebody that they can understand you and connect with you on a different level.
Yeah.
That would have been bonding from the beginning for you guys.
It was,
right?
yeah.
And pulled you guys closer. And a lot of things, maybe I imagine that you would have to like speak out and explain. You wouldn't have to explain to the same degree.
Yeah.
Right? If somebody else has walked through that or is walking through that.
Absolutely. And a
alongside
lot
you.
of my trauma stuff, he just understood.
Yeah.
Like he just understood where it was coming from.
Yeah.
Which was really nice. Huge. Yeah.
And did he have children with
No.
his Okay.
No. Which is also a blessing.
Yeah.
You know, like it's just so much easier. And like from the get-go, I was like, if this becomes a thing, I'm not leaving Saskatoon. Like you would have to transfer your entire life over here.
Oh,
he was in Manitoba.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so I was like, because our team for my youngest is here.
Yes.
And I was like, I'm not leaving my medical team for her. And plus, I don't even know how that would work with divorcing, blah, blah, blah. I was like,
Manitoba.
Erica, we might have some listeners.
Haters.
That's what's really going to get us blasted.
In the comments.
Yeah. Don't say anything about Winnipeg.
Just kidding. Kidding.
We love Manitoba.
It brought us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so he was willing to come.
Yeah.
He was willing to be like, yep.
He's like, I love you. Yes.
So now, obviously, I imagine, I don't know, like, what our time frame is on.
Can I tell you our storyline? Just
Yes.
I think it's so fun.
Gosh, yes.
Okay, so we started talking in January. And
Like, of what year?
of 2022.
Right. Okay, yes.
Oh, fresh.
Fresh.
Yeah. Fresh.
Yeah. So we started talking in January.
You made that sound like a gum commercial.
So fresh and so clean.
All right, keep going.
And then in February, we like told each other that we liked each other, which was super fun. And then, so he had come out to visit me and some other friends and family and stuff in February before we had told each other that we liked each other. So that's when my kids met him. And then April 1st, we started dating. April 15th, I sent him my ring size. June 1st, he ordered the ring. July, we led worship at a camp together, and it was like the best weekend of life. And then September, we got engaged. November, I was divorced. January, we got married.
Wow.
Like, it was so... And we
bam.
Yeah, we started going through this book of like 50 or 101 questions before you get remarried. And we started going through it before we were even dating. We were like, we should just like go really slow and be friends and like see where this thing's at. Should we order this book? Should we start going through
I sent you a copy.
Yeah.
Should arrive tomorrow.
It was amazing.
Starting on page 1.
Okay,
Yeah, it was great.
This is great, though, because I do want to ask you about dating after marriage.
Terrifying.
Dating.
Terrifying.
I'm going to put air quotes over older. You're not older, but I feel like it's very different than when you're like at Bible camp meeting someone.
Oh my gosh.
I feel like
Yeah.
as soon as you're past, I don't even know how old you are, Julia. 24. 25.
You're so sweet. Thank you.
30.
I'm 31.
Okay.
Oh,
I was like,
I'm 32.
How old am I?
That's like when people guess my age.
You're
They're like, you're 20.
31.
And I'm like,
No, I'm 32.
You're 32. No,
How
you're
old are you?
31. Guys,
Well,
I'm
we all have
40,
to think
so I know
about
that.
She's 40.
I'm going to be
You're
33.
40?
I'm
Yeah,
32.
Okay, I'm
You are
32.
not 40.
I am 40.
No way.
I just turned 40.
Happy birthday.
Thanks.
That's amazing. You do not look like 40.
Thank you.
You're 32.
I'm 32.
Request
I'm almost
to clip
32.
that, you guys.
So you're 91, baby.
Yeah.
Okay, but this is my point.
How old are you?
90.
Okay.
90.
So 90 years old.
She's like
you guys
91 baby, and I'm like 90.
I'm
I'm 32,
90.
I'll be 33.
I was like, you're not.
You are
90.
not.
You're
You
turning
lie.
33.
I know you suck with memory, but like you're really not 90.
I'm really great at answering questions the wrong way. People want them answered.
But this is my point of air quotes
Okay, yes.
older, because I feel like, honestly, maybe this is bad, but I'm like, I feel like anything past, I just don't know where people meet people. I met people
Tell
at
me
bars.
about it.
I met people at bars when I was like 19 and 20.
On an app.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah,
So I just
probably.
am wondering, like, what was that like for you when you realized you were like, you're like, okay, I'm getting divorced.
Ready?
Were you like, was it in your thought that you're like, I'm going to eventually have to do this again? Or when you were ready, were you like, I just want to know
What do
what
I do?
What do I do? Like, I'm curious.
Yeah. No, at first I was like, I am never doing this again. I'm not trusting anyone with my life ever, you know? And I went through a whole thing. Like when you get divorced and your life crumbles, you're like reevaluating everything you've ever known. Then I got over that. And I was like would love to have someone in my life. And as soon as I was ready to start dating, I was like, how? Like, I don't go to bars. That's not my thing. I go to church, but like, who is single at 30 and wants to date a person with 2 kids? You know what I mean? One with a disability, one with ADHD. Like, it's a whole thing. I felt like I was too much very quickly. I was like, I have all this baggage. I've got 2 kids. I can't support myself. Like, who's gonna want?
You're like, the life starts
Bachelorette
here.
number 1.
Yeah.
But the stories we tell
Oh
ourselves.
man. Yeah. I'm
Right?
a catch. Thank you very much.
Yes, you are.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, but when I first was ready to start dating, I like went on the apps and it was terrifying. And I remember signing up for one, the first one I signed up for, and I was like, okay, I can do this. I can date people online. And the first person I matched with was my ex's best friend. And I was like, no, delete, emergency delete. And I was like, done. I am not going on apps anymore.
God was like, this is not
This
for
is
you.
not it.
I've
Get
got
out.
someone for
Yeah.
you.
And at that moment, I was like, okay, I'm going to have to meet someone like through a friend. I'm going to have to know that they are like, they come with good resources, is the wrong word.
Intentions?
No, like if you're writing references,
yes,
thank you.
Referrals.
Yeah, like it's going to have to be someone that someone knows, or I know, you know.
Yes.
And so it was someone that I've known for years and years, and I know his integrity, and I know his heart, and it was just perfect.
Can you?
But yeah, online dating. Do not recommend. Scary world.
10 out of 10. Do not recommend.
Yeah.
10 out of 10.
Zero stars.
Zero stars. Never doing it again. Can you speak to your journey of finding, what's the right term? Safety, becoming comfortable in the sexual aspect with your new husband? Because I imagine that was, I can't even imagine.
Huge. Yeah. Like that was one of the biggest things, I think, going into a new relationship, because I was like, I don't know if I like sex, and I don't want to get married if I know that I don't like it, because I didn't feel like that was fair to someone who does like sex.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I remember, just backing up just a little bit.
Yes.
There was a point where my ex and I were like, maybe we could try this again if he changed a lot. And I remember telling him, like, what is the word for people that don't like sex?
Isn't it like
it starts with an A.
Yeah. I was gonna say agoraphobia, but like, guys, that's like not it.
That's not it.
It's also not areola. Wait, is it asexual?
Asexual.
Asexual.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say asymmetrical.
Good Lord.
See, we're all
Not
over the
it
place.
at
Yeah.
all. I remember being like, I think I'm asexual. So what are we going to do about that? If we get back together, what are we going to do about that? And he was like, well, we would just schedule it once or twice a week because I need sex in my relationship. And I was like, wrong answer. I'm out. Like, there's no compassion. There's no empathy. There's no love there. Like, no, I'm not doing that.
Oh, obviously. With your ex?
Yeah, with my ex.
Oh my gosh, for a hot second I thought we were talking about your, and I was like,
how did this work out?
I'm back. We're good.
We're good.
Yeah. So I knew that like whoever I was going to end up with needed to be, I don't know, cool with me freaking out, you know?
Yeah.
And when we would like make out and whatever, there was a lot of times where I have severe anxiety.
Yes.
And I would have panic attacks and like, don't touch me for the next 2 hours. And he wouldn't. And he would just continually say like, as long as it took, it would just be like, you're safe. I am not him. I love you. You're okay. You know? And then I wouldn't let him touch me for a while for a lot of things. And still, sometimes I still get this, like I get triggered and I'm like, back off. Right now I'm like crying, you know? And he's just so good about it. He's like, never wants to force anything. If I say stop, he stops. I still find it hard to say stop. And so he's just so in tune that he like can feel my body tense up and he's out. He's done, you know? Whereas in my previous relationship, I would like have a pillow over my face crying and he would still get off. And I'm like, that's not okay. Like now I realize that's not okay. But at the time I was like, he's the husband, I'm the wife. This is my duty. This is what I've been told forever. You know what I mean? Which is not okay. If that's in your situation right now, that's not love. That's not okay.
What was going through
your question?
I forget my question.
No, just how you felt safe in your marriage.
Oh, you
What
found
now.
it. And then I guess
It's all on him, I think.
Yeah.
Just making a safe space for me.
And then I guess what at the beginning with him, what sort of like, I would imagine there's like a push pull going on in your head of like, I'm, you know, I feel attracted to him. I'm enjoying this. What about this? You know what I mean? So it's like, how did you eventually let yourself open up to, you know, figure out what you did enjoy and how that it was okay to enjoy and that kind of stuff? Like, what was the conversation in your head?
At the very beginning, there was no fighting it. I was just like retract
Right.
and freak out and be triggered. But I'm really stepping into like grounding myself, and I'm now on anxiety medication, which is really, really helpful. 100% recommend. 5 stars, 2 thumbs up.
Welcome
I
to the
also
club.
agree.
I was literally like, why don't y'all just
This
can all
side
talk
we
about
can.
it?
All over there. We're on the meds.
Yeah. And I think that really has helped a lot too. But I think the biggest thing is just knowing that he is so supportive and he doesn't care if he gets off or if we finish or not. Like, he just wants to be with me and he just loves me and he loves my body and he makes me feel loved and he makes me feel wanted. And it's not just in the bedroom. It's like always, you know what I mean? And that's a huge difference, I think. And so just like allowing myself to believe that he loves me and that he's a safe space, it's a game changer.
I'm really glad you actually asked that question, because as you're sitting here talking, I'm like, I can only imagine that this is like life after rape, marital rape, any kind of sexual abuse. I don't know, but I can only imagine that there's a bit of like, I will never want to do this again. But there is actually hope and joy and love and life after when you can go through the work. And you spoke to going to a counselor for marriage counseling, but I'm curious on how you healed before him and how, what did that look like for you? Like, what steps did you take? And for people listening, like, is there any advice you would give that you were like, this was the thing that like saved me? Or
go see a counselor.
Okay.
Get on medication.
But maybe a counselor, can I say this, add this in, a counselor who is familiar with trauma.
Thank you. Yes.
Because our previous...
And if you're a Christian, it doesn't have to be a Christian counselor. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. Someone who, has walked people through or has been through themselves this similar situation, at least. Absolutely. I saw a divorce coach at the very beginning of things. I saw my counselor, and I did energy healing, which was a beautiful experience. I did a lot of different things, and I did a lot of digging into, what do I believe? Who am I outside of wife, mom, all of those things? Just coming home to myself, it was a really big deal. And then I read things like The Great Sex Rescue and was like, oh, that's not normal. This is what I should expect, or this is how it, things like that. And then like trauma books as well. I've got I love reading. So I've done a lot of reading on the topic, and like The Body Keeps the Score.
I was going to say, I'm like 3/4 of the way through it. Me and my husband are reading it together.
The Body Keeps the Score.
So good.
So good.
Somebody
like
so
good. That. I will. 100%.
Yeah, it's so good.
What is a divorce coach?
Literally, that's what I thought too.
Yeah, so a life coach that focuses in on women that are or men too, I guess, that are getting divorced. And she just like helped me walk through all of the lies that I was believing. And, okay, you really need to call your lawyer this week. You can do it. I believe in you. Have you called your lawyer yet? Like just like being an extra support person for you.
How
it's a beautiful thing.
Find her?
So I am actually a life coach as well. So her and I walked through coaching school together.
Okay.
And then she knew that I was going through this, and that's what her focus was at that time. So she was like, I'll give this to you for free. Like, come walk with me for 3 months. I was like, thank you.
Yeah. How amazing is that?
I know.
That would have been
Beautiful.
super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
How has the response been on social media? Because you were very open, and it was one of those, I think I like saw one of your posts and I like sent it to them, and I was like, we have to have her on the podcast. Like, look how open she is, and she's just like saying it like it is. And so I'm curious on how you're finding the community on social media to be, even your community, like outside of social media, like your family that you're sharing, like his family that people might, make those connections. How has that been for you?
99% so supportive, like so unbelievably supportive. And a lot of people just being like, thank you for speaking out about this, because, and then them sharing their story with me. And it's a very beautiful space. Like I've really been very thankful, and I've, fostered a lot of connections and helped women do a few things, and it's been really, really great. I've blocked all of his family, most of his family. I think I still have like a cousin because she's cool. But also like some of my family has chosen to, not that there's sides, but take his side. And that was really hurtful. I had a conversation with them being like, here's all of the facts. You know that he's been arrested. Like, example, I know that we're short on time, but my cousin was getting married here in the city, and he got invited to the wedding, as did I, but I said, I'm not going if he's coming. And then he got invited to the cousin meal, and he took the kids. And I didn't find out until afterwards that this big family dinner had happened, and that my kids were there, and that I wasn't invited. And that kind of stuff has been very hurtful, especially because I've been so open about the pain and the anxiety that everything has brought. It was really hard, and still really is, and they were people on my dad's side of the family. So it felt like another loss on top of losing my dad. So that has been really hard. But otherwise, I think most of it has been just a beautiful community of people and so many people are so happy for me and Derek.
Yes.
Which is like just a beautiful thing. I've had people come up to me and be like, I follow you on social media and I cried at your wedding photos, like just like actually so excited for us. And it's really beautiful. It's really cool.
So lovely. I think that just like really speaks to that you shine through.
Thank you.
Well, and you said before, that you believe restoration can happen. And I think sometimes or like redemptive stories. And I think sometimes we think of that when we're like, oh, a divorce, like these two people who are separated, there can be restoration or redeeming things. But I'm like, there's even redemption in your story, right? Like
Absolutely.
There's redemption in another form that I think sometimes we might not think about when we think about divorce.
Yeah.
And the new life that you are going to have and your girls are going to have, right? With this new family. And it's like so beautiful and
I was
amazing.
talking to my teacher, not my teacher, one of the kids' teachers this morning about my daughter's anxiety. And she said it has improved so much since January, like since my husband and his dog have joined our family. And I just thought that was so beautiful because I'm like, there is redemption happening here. Like for all three of like me and my girls, someone once said to me, Jesus loves you more than he loves your marriage. And that really struck a chord with me because so many Christians and so many people are like, divorce is the worst thing. God hates divorce. Yeah, it says God hates divorce, not God hates the divorcee. Yeah. That God doesn't hate you because you got divorced. Yeah. Like I hate divorce too. Big whoop.
Yeah. It's not a fun thing.
It's not a fun thing to walk through at all. No, I wouldn't wish it upon anyone. But sometimes it's necessary and that's okay. It's okay to step out of a relationship that is broken and be a whole person on your own.
And I want to circle back just before we wrap up to leave our listeners with tips. Yeah. So I'm like, if they're listening and they're like, hey, I know someone in an abusive relationship or maybe I'm in an abusive relationship, could you give twofold advice to someone who's maybe in an abusive relationship, what your encouragement would be to them, and someone who maybe knows someone in an abusive relationship, how they can show up and maybe support them?
Yeah, that's great. If you're in an abusive relationship, and you can recognize that yourself. That's, I think, step one, like being able to say to yourself. But then you need to start building a community. You need to tell a friend, tell your mom, tell your sister, whoever it is, and let them come alongside you and start being okay with the fact that you need out, and it is going to cost you money and it is going to cost you friendships. It's going to cost you relationships. It's going to cost you your house, like all of these things. And I know that it's scary, but it will be so worth it when you're on the other side. Yeah. Get in my DMs and I'll pray with you.
Yeah.
I don't know. And if you're walking with someone who is in an abusive relationship, if you've got a friend who is, it's so hard because they have to be able to see it first. I had friends before I was ready and it was like if they would have stepped in and been like called CPS or something like that, would have not been okay because I wasn't ready to let go of things. Right. But having said that, I needed people to keep reminding me and to say that wasn't okay. That is abuse. Just so you know, like that's not how love should look like. So yeah, I think just coming alongside those people in the most loving, gentle, beautiful way that you can, and not in like a I know what's best for you kind of situation, but just like I am here for you. I support you and I love you and I will be here the whole step of the way, and then wait for them to be able to come through it.
Well, I can imagine like sometimes we want to jump into someone else's journey, right? And so you're like, I can see what's going on, so I just want to fast forward for you. And it's
totally.
like,
and I had friends like that for me that we've talked about now that are like, man, I wanted to rip his throat out, like so mad on my behalf. And I'm like,
and we've said before, sometimes people's motives are based off their discomfort. And I think what's a key element, and you spoke to, is kind of like, I think sometimes people in abusive relationships, and I have found myself in one before, not to the extent, but I remember a friend saying to me, she just like looked at me across the table and was like, you're not ready. When you're ready, I will be here. Yeah. And I will be here even now, even though she hated what was happening. And I think sometimes some people almost get a little like sick of the drama and they're like, she just needs to get out. And they're like, I'm so annoyed that she keeps going back to him. And it's like, that's your discomfort and you're like,
Yes.
I want to get like move on. And it's like, it's not about you. And you might need to watch it over and over again so that when they're ready to turn to you, you're there.
You
Absolutely.
have to give people the opportunity to get to where they need to be.
Yeah. We rush people. And if someone had come to your home and dragged you kicking and screaming out, you would have just turned around and went right back.
Absolutely.
And now you would have lost that friend.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I love those tips.
So good.
That's amazing.
I think I would add too, just really quick, if you are like, I remember praying that he would hit me so that there would be a black eye evidence of the abuse. And if you find yourself in that kind of situation where it's like, it's emotional, it's spiritual, it's sexual, it's things that aren't as visible as a bloody nose, to document, to call the police, and to remember that that is abuse. Yeah. Not just, he just hit the wall beside my head. He just slammed the door in my face. He just did this, but he just pushed me, like they add up, and that is still abuse. And there are women out there with much severe, like more severe stories than mine. But if you find yourself in any type of abuse, you need to get out. You need to get out. Call the police. Gets easier, I promise. I call the police now all the time. I have anxiety, like we've talked about. The amount of times the police have been called on my behalf for my anxiety is like extreme. And it's okay. I'm not ashamed of it anymore, Yeah. It gets easier. It gets easier, and there's light at the end of the tunnel. There really is. There is still hope. There is a life after the chaos of mess.
Thank you so much for being so open with us and
Thank
sharing
you
the
for
redemption.
having me here. Yeah.
Yeah. And your journey through. Megan has one final question for you.
Final question.
Yes.
Could you share with our listeners the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
I don't know if it's really advice, but I said it earlier. Jesus loves you more than he loves your marriage. And marriage is not the be all end all. Like even if I hadn't been remarried now, I'd still be a whole person, and I'm much better on this side of things than on the other side of things. The other piece of advice that comes to my mind, which is so silly, is take off your socks first, because there's nothing weirder than just like a naked person with socks up to them.
I thought this was going somewhere like so deep, like
no, like
so
if you're
you
getting
can
undressed,
feel the earth under your feet. It's like no, because it is weird.
No, it's weird. Just see a naked body with just like if you're gonna have sex, start with the socks.
It's so
Unless
true.
It's part of the, unless it's part of the, the game.
If you're like playing around, I mean, you do you, but otherwise, get them off you.
Keeping your socks on, hey? All right.
That is the perfect note to end this.
I love it. Can you also share where the community can find and connect with you?
Yeah, Instagram, Julia Dawn Love. That's my main account.
Amazing. Is there any other resources that you would direct people to within Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada? You may not have like links. We can link that out in show notes, but just anything that's been...
I would go read The Great Sex Rescue.
Yeah.
I would say go read The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah.
And there are helplines that I have called. I don't know the numbers, but there are helplines to talk things through. And if you are at a place where you need to get out, but you don't have the resources, there is a free, in Saskatchewan at least, there's a free lawyer call that you can get. You can get advice through this. I wish I knew the name of it, but there's free advice that you can get of your next steps and how to. And many, many lawyers will take an initial meeting with no pay.
Amazing.
And so if you go do that, you can go see 5 different lawyers and ask them 5 different questions, and it'll be free. There are ways to get out. There's hope.
Amazing.
Thank you for leaving us with those resources.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me here. Thank you for this discussion. I think it's very, very important. So thank you.
Bye. Bye.
And scene.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this episode of the Her Podcast. If you want to follow along with us, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at its.her.podcast. We can't wait to see you there.
Bye.
Adios.